Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Proudland with or however he starts it.
Boy, that's definitely not how he starts it. That's how we've started it.
It's
So,
like, that's what I hear. That's what I hear. See, okay?
I mean, I won't argue with it.
Yeah.
I usually
So today is not Proudland. It's Cyphinity. Is that the best we could come up with of meshing our names together?
Yeah, or it could be like Ursinity, but that sounds like some kind of Greek god with like that's connected to some kind of weird fetish. That's just like it sounds too much like Oedipus.
Yeah.
So boy, we're off to a good start. We're not even 30 seconds in. And, yeah, I mean, Cyphinity sounds fine. Like, but if it was Proud and You, I was actually thinking about this. If it was Proud and You, it'd be Pryphus or
Pryphus, okay,
or Shroud.
Syed.
Dude, Shroud would be good,
Sure.
but you need to like start your name with a few different letters. And then if it was Roland and Me, that would just be the Tuesday show, and nobody listens to that anyway. So
Yeah, that's right.
I'm just kidding.
So we're
I'm
kicking
having a
off. Yeah, that show's awesome. I love
Yeah.
that show. I feel very proud of that show.
Me too. It's a good show. It's quite the production. But because I was just flaming it because now I think to myself, boy, that's I'm not gonna be on that tomorrow. So
Yeah,
I feel like really the whole point of this switcharoo week, which if you are confused by our voices right now, that's because this is our Patreon goal / April 1st or April 1st week of switcharoo week. I really feel like this is just a chance for all the show hosts to just make fun of each other on all their respective shows and just talk about how good they are. So I mean that's what I'm going for at least, and I know that's what Proud and Roland are going to go for because that's what they do on a regular basis. So.
Well, thankfully, we aren't going to have a pairing of those two this week at all.
Yeah, thank God.
They're separated.
Their weird bromance is banned.
Yeah, it's only grown with Proudland too. It just gets weirder and weirder as time goes on.
It's scary.
So Ursi and I today are going to tackle a couple of. We're going to treat this like a legitimate Proudland, and maybe even better than a legitimate Proudland.
Definitely, I can't even believe you put in maybe even. It's definitely
yeah. Well. So, because you hear Proud and you hear Roland. I almost said you hear Proudland, which I might as well just reference them by their Hollywood couple name after all.
Yeah, of course.
But you always hear those two. Anytime they talk about supporting, it bugs the shit out of me.
There's always a backdrop to it. Like a backdrop, which is just neither of them are support players, and both very rarely play support.
Yeah, well, I mean, and you can probably speak to, Proud's supporting capability and frequency more than I can, but I can tell you just from watching Roland on the stream, it's so frustrating as somebody who, I'll be honest, like the only time I ever picked up a core was when I felt like that might be the best way to, start climbing at my pathetic MMR range. And I think it's helped. I'm trending around 3,100 right now on that recal counter. See, it's on its way.
I'm looking forward to it.
Good.
Either for you to be very disappointed or for us to actually be able to use our real accounts during our team streams. Because boy, I want my cosmetics. And granted, we'll lose a ton of games when we actually start playing on our real account. Like, I feel like there's gonna be a rude reckoning where like our games right now are pretty easy unless we do stupid things. But boy, it's gonna be interesting.
I look forward to it.
You say that now,
but I really do. It's gonna be good. I'm looking forward to it.
This is like a dynamic I see in almost every. I shouldn't say almost every, but a lot of low MMR players that I play with. That I hear from are like, oh well, I play with my like 4K or my 5K friends, and they're like, let's say 1K or 2K, even 3K, and they're like, oh, it goes great. Like I keep my own. It's like you really don't, but you think you do because you're winning games because of your friends and like, you may be playing it all right, but this is where, and also I hear the opposite where people are like, oh man, I just like, I want to play with higher MMR players. Like I just feel like I would learn more and like we wouldn't be that bad. We even got this like back in the in-houses where people be like, yeah, like they're very low MMR, but they're like, yeah, well, I don't want to play in the high MMR lobby. Like I won't feel like I'd learn better. Like, yeah, but like you think you're going to hold your own. You think it's not going to be that bad, but it ends up being terrible very quickly. So Cyphus, you and Roland, and even Growdy to an extent, I think it's going to be quite the rude awakening when you guys get into, presumably we'll start averaging into 4K. And that's when you start getting the 7Ks that just don't play party, and it's absolutely.
I'm honestly okay with it because we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it just because it's gonna be good. Just because, yeah, like we're only doing it on Sundays. We're only doing it for the team stream.
That is true. It's only 3 games.
Yeah, I mean it'll be worthwhile. I think.
I think it'll be good content.
Maybe not so much for you
great
guys,
content,
but
it'll just be a lot of losing.
Yeah,
presumably, or like me and Proud are gonna have to actually start like really trying hard. That's gonna also come into, not that we don't play seriously now, but like we do some memey things and some. I don't like give it my undivided attention. Or I shouldn't say that, but sure. I'm not trying as hard as I would in like a real game. But yeah, that's going to be interesting. Anyway, that's a tangent, but I'm looking forward to the recalibration. I'd rather lose in my cosmetics than win without them. I'm committed.
Okay, fair enough. Well, regardless, I think with that recal account, I'll just calibrate the party playing with you guys on the team stream.
Yeah.
And then it'll happen.
It'll
we'll
boost
be
higher.
go from there.
That is, I think I talked about this on the Tuesday Q&A, but that is, if you have an uncalibrated party MMR, you can cheese the system and just play party ranked with high MMR players, and you will calibrate high. So, pro tip, if you're looking at cheese stuff.
I'm totally down to cheese the system.
I'm glad. I'm glad you are, Cyphus.
Always down. So this all started though because like I was saying, when I watch, I only swapped to core because I wanted to try to climb with it. And
common sense.
I would rather play support, and it's been nice on that recal account to get back into playing support. And I feel like I've taken a lot of the lessons that I've learned, playing with you guys, and I think I'm playing at a higher tier of support than I ever was before.
Yeah.
But when I watch Roland play on the stream, it's maddening. I see him do things like not upgrade the courier because he's 110 gold away from grabbing his boots. I see him not buy wards or not de-ward something because he's close to getting those boots to become mana boots. I see him just forego basic supporting duties and roles in order to get his items. And I see him miss team fights all the time because he's farming on a support. And I don't get me wrong, I do plenty of stupid shit on support, but it is maddening to see someone claim that they're going to support and then, kind of fall lax on those duties, especially when they're so critical in the early game. Mm-hmm. Because I think one of the best lessons I ever took away, at least from, you and Proud regarding supporting, was your item timings are built around when you get a kill, right? So if I'm supporting well and if I'm doing my job, and because I've bought those wards and because I've upgraded that courier and I've kept the efficiency as clean and crisp as I can make it for the rest of the team in that early game, at some point I'm going to be able to turn that into me getting a kill in lane, harassing that offlaner, or I'm going to be able to smoke gank that mid and get a kill that way. Because of superior vision, because I took the time to buy those wards, because I took the time to buy that smoke. And that's when I'm going to get my boots. That's when I'm going to get my items. That's when those things are going to start happening for me. And I definitely feel like I never see that in Roland when he's supporting. And I don't know about Proud. I don't know what Proud does on support, but
I mean, Proud's actually a good support because he always plays safe lane carry basically. I shouldn't say always, but in general, I'd say probably 75% of his games are safe lane carry. So that gives you or him or any of you safe lane carry players a pretty good perspective on what good lane supporting is regarding zoning and when you want pulls to happen and stuff like that. But his support pool is very limited because he doesn't play the role that much. And I've literally never seen him play roaming support except for our recent Theory Crafting Thursday when he played Monkey King. So I think his is he's a good support player, he's just unpracticed. And that's he's good at theoretical supporting, I guess. But it is just any role. I mean, me talking about safe lane carry is not as valuable as Proud talking about safe lane carry, because even if we have the same amount of knowledge, although obviously we do not, he's in practice as a safe lane carry player, whereas I'm out of practice because I play safe lane carry maybe 1 in 10 games now recently. because if I play solo queue, I usually will play support or mid, and then I've been playing some offlane Magnus every once in a while just because that's fun. So it like Dota, really the advice you can give is very situational depending on what you're playing at the moment, because it's so easy to like get behind the times if you're thinking of supporting from like last patch or from a long time ago, or vice versa with carries. So it is always just funny to me when I hear them talk with authority on a support issue, and I'm like, this is the most wrong thing I've ever heard in my entire life. That's actually a lie. That has not happened recently, but every once in a while, it's...
Yeah.
So actually, I guess really what I would get onto it, and I promise we'll get this show to like a productive standpoint, but the thing with any of us giving advice on roles we do not play or heroes we do not play actively is nuance. So like Proud gives excellent baseline advice, and when it comes to supporting, but since he doesn't do it regularly, I'd say you lose some of the very little nuanced things. Similarly, when I talk about carrying, I get all the basics right, and because I have been a carry player, I would like to think I get some of the nuance right, but there's always the little things that you miss out on. Sure. That's kind of what you lose and what you gain from having different people host and different people talking about different subjects. So yeah, I don't want to I don't want to make anybody not listen to our advice on things. Like, oh well, you just can't talk about this.
No, fair enough. But I agree with you. Like, I think we're going to tackle these support issues maybe definitely in a different way than they would have, and
probably less
I'm
yelling.
hoping with more nuance. Oh yeah, definitely
more neurons also.
Yeah, more neurons. Yeah. So we want to talk today about roaming, and then we're also going to touch on Midas, I think, a little bit here at the end of the episode. But the reason that roaming popped into my head was I've been, like I said, the recalibration account's been going pretty decently. I've been getting into matches where what I do at the start of every match, now that I'm into the recalibration element, or now that I'm this far into the recal account, is I hover over everybody and I hover over everybody on the enemy team, and I very quickly try to assess: am I in a higher skill game than I'm used to, or am I in a lower skill game? So if I hover over everybody and I see that I'm with a bunch of like level 2s and level 3s and nobody's got an MMR displayed, obviously at that point,
just a crapshoot.
Yeah, it's a crapshoot, and I'll just hover myself over safe lane and, hover over Spectre and play something in that regard. Mm-hmm. Or occasionally I'll hover over mid and just hover over Viper and just be like, fuck it, I'm just going to dominate a lane.
God.
Well, hey, it's
I just can't imagine doing that to myself, honestly.
It's I enjoy playing Viper. I'll be honest.
Each their own.
But as I pop into these higher skill games, I'll immediately just hold off. I'll see what other people want to do, because at that point, like, I don't think I can carry at a 3K and above level by any means, or not as effectively as others will, especially those who like climbed to 3K by carrying. So I'll hold off and I'll fill whatever role is left over. And I find myself frequently in those higher skill games, because people are willing to support at a higher tier than they are in the 2K and below range. I'll find myself needing to play a roamer. And I feel like I had a decent grasp on roaming at one point before 7.0 happened. But now with some of the map changes and some of the jungle changes, and with the addition of these talent trees and
new runes,
new runes. I don't know. I don't think I have as good a grasp on it as I once did. And then as I really started to analyze what I was doing when I was roaming, I feel like and I suspect that it's this way for a lot of people, especially those who watch Pro Dota. I find myself trying to mimic the movements of pros that I see. So, for instance, 2 days ago, I played a roaming Ricky game, and the enemy team, I believe it was an Enigma that they had in the jungle. And let me double check here. Yeah, so they had this Enigma in the jungle, and what I did is I remembered a game. I can't even remember which pro it was, but I remembered watching this pro game where they had the Ricky basically leeching XP off of the Enigma in the jungle and occasionally sniping a last hit from him.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I mimicked what I saw a pro do. And at one point I saw, because I'd gotten a pretty deep ward in, I saw the courier go down to drop something off, and I ran as fast as I could to go try to snipe that courier. And I failed miserably, even though I had the orb. So I wonder how much of, especially with roaming play in particular, because that feels like something that is so incredibly nuanced, on the topic of nuance in a game and nuance in a role. I feel like that is something that is so incredibly nuanced that it is very often easy to just kind of fall into a monkey see, monkey do kind of, play style with that, because I it's not like that was a unique idea. That wasn't my reasoning for going and leeching XP off of the Enigma was not my own. Knowing that I needed to go and snipe that courier was because I've seen that happen before in a pro game. It wasn't that I had a fundamental knowledge, and I feel like I did great in this game. I think I even got a GG fuck you Ricky at the end of that game. I felt proud about it, but as I laid in bed trying to think about a really good topic for this show, this one kept popping into my brain because I'll be honest, like I'm mimicking what I saw. I'm not, I don't have valid reasoning for it. I don't know if I would have been more effective in this particular game in another location or doing something differently. I just don't know. So I wanted to kind of pick your brain as a I know you've been transitioning over to the mid with everybody lately, but I know your background is primarily in supporting. I'm sure you played some roamers. I would love to delve into, who we should be roaming with, why we should be roaming, where we should be roaming, and what the fuck our goal is when we're playing a roamer.
Right. So
unpack that.
Yeah, no, I mean, we can approach it in steps. I will say as a preface that if you do, watching programs is always kind of misleading in a way, but supporting and specifically roaming, I think, is, in my opinion, the thing that has the biggest difference in how it's played and the effectiveness from low MMR to high MMR. Whereas something like carry or mid is fairly linear in like people just get better as the MMR climbs. But if you watch a 5k person that plays roamers, then you watch a 3k person that plays roamers, you will notice an absurdly large difference in every facet of the position compared to if you watch a 3k carry player versus a 5k carry player. You see the same basic things, one just does it better than the other. So roaming is extremely nuanced. That is definitely the word to describe it, right? So roaming from the get-go is very hero dependent. I believe I talked about this on a recent show.
Let's tackle that first. Let's talk about who should be roaming. Like who are your roamers? Because I love the idea of so maybe one slight tangent here. You always see, especially in lower MMR ranges, I'm sure you still get ample amounts of junglers.
Oh yeah,
people
constantly.
who lock those goddamn Legion commanders in and lock those Bloodseekers and those axes in.
They do the freaking Calling Blade Iron Talon garbage where they have like plus 36 damage and it's super fast. It's the plague of Dota. It's actually really good though.
Yeah.
Like, to be fair, some games jungling is the proper thing to do. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell Roland that I said that.
Okay, all right, we'll keep it secret here. But I think the attitude behind jungling more often than not is not, you just said like sometimes jungling is the play. But more often than not, I think what happens in the mind of somebody who throws themselves in the jungle, especially somebody who tosses themselves in the jungle from the get-go, before anybody's tried to place into a lane, when the first icon you see on the map is in the jungle and it's a goddamn Legion commander, I feel like what you're seeing there is somebody who is saying, okay, I want to play a core, I want to get kills, I want to get farm, I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight with anybody to have to do it.
Yeah, you don't want to fight with your own team or the enemy team.
Yeah, I want to be here getting my farm so that I can be a playmaker and so I can get kills and have fun. I would say to those people, if any of you are listening, if any of you have done this before, if that is your reasoning, because I know it, I've done it myself. I've had those games where I picked a Bloodseeker to go into the jungle because I wanted to participate. I didn't feel like I could trust my teammates, or I was just in a bad mood, or I just wanted to play a playmaker. I just wanted to be somebody who's doing that. You can kind of get that with a roamer. You can still kind of be active on the map, and you can still, in fact, being active on the map instead of just AFKing in that jungle, is like you're going to get some kills. You're going to be involved in those things. So maybe people should be considering roaming instead of jungling, just from just as a plea, I guess I'll throw out there before we delve into it. But
yeah,
who should we be playing? Who should we be playing when we're roaming?
Okay, so in terms of roamers, in a very general sense, I always categorize it as two different kinds of roamers. There are roamers that force issues, so a roamer like a Spirit Breaker or a roamer like Ogre Magi, kind of. These are the heroes that they come in. Earth Spirit's another really good example, or Night Stalker. These are heroes that are beefy in general. Well, no, not in general. All of them are beefy, and they create issues. They create opportunities for your teammates. And then there are roamers like Bounty Hunter and Ricky, but to a lesser extent than Bounty Hunter, and Skywrath, where I may have listed Skywrath in both. Skywrath is in the latter, not the former. And these are roamers that take advantage of other heroes that can be aggressive, if that makes sense. So, for instance, roamers we most commonly think of roaming towards mid. And if you have a mid laner like a Storm Spirit, let's say, he can take advantage of a roamer like a Bounty Hunter who is going to put pressure on the lane, because Storm Spirit has the kit and has the capability to force an issue. Whereas if you have a much less aggressive capability mid, like a let's see, what's a good example? Like a Tinker. Yeah, like a Tinker. Tinker needs a hero to come in and stun and make a big play, like an Earth Spirit or like a Spirit Breaker. Maybe even like a worse example, like a Sniper.
Let me, I should make sure I'm following along here. So you're saying on your team, right? So if I'm with the Tinker, the Tinker may be somebody who does better with like a Spirit Breaker or an Ogre, somebody who can set up a stun, who can provide, some damage, or or force an issue. Whereas maybe if I'm playing that Storm Spirit, maybe I would benefit more from like a Ricky, who can kind of sit and wait for you to start forcing the issue and then provide something supplemental to it.
Yeah, I mean, setup is really the key. So if you have a mid that can set up a kill and can deal like a stun or deal burst damage, then you can have either category of roamer and be successful. But if you're in the category of mids that does not have a way to set up a kill or a way to quickly establish a kill, like let's say you have a mid Pugna, for instance. If you have that, that's like obviously an extreme example, but we're going to work with it. He does not have the capability to quickly kill somebody if a Ricky roams, right? Because he's not going to be able to get up in that person's face fast enough. Whereas if a Spirit Breaker comes in and charges in and then bashes somebody back to you and deals all that, A, frontline, being able to take damage, and B, deals actual stuns and actual setup for Pugna to get in line and do his stuff, those are basically the two kinds of roamers, and how one can be successful in certain games and one can be successful in virtually every game. So in general, the way I think about this is that the roamers from category A, the heroes, like I said, Spirit Breaker, Earth Spirit, Night Stalker, Earthshaker, but to a lesser extent, even Treant if you're really good at him, or Monkey King is another good example, one of the top tier roamers right now. These are the heroes that I would pick if I'm playing solo queue or if I'm playing party queue or whatever. I want roamers that can force issues themselves and set up kills. If I'm playing in a very regimented team game, or I suppose if you're playing at much higher MMRs where people know more about how to react to certain picks, or if I have an already aggressive mid, then you can pick roamers from the second category like Bounty Hunter, right? I think probably the best way to illustrate this is that if a Spirit Breaker goes somewhere, he can do stuff on his own, right? He can at least not die, but he can force issues, he can put a lot of pressure. If a Bounty Hunter goes somewhere on his own, he needs somebody else to do something. A Bounty Hunter on his own is not going to kill anybody, is not going to establish anything good. Maybe he'll snipe a courier, but that's about it, right? He needs somebody else to facilitate the kills, whereas Spirit Breaker can basically do it on his own, or Earth Spirit can basically do it on his own, or Night Stalker can basically do it on their own. So that's the first thing when you're picking a roamer, is thinking, okay, how aggressive can my mid be? How aggressive can my other heroes be on the team? And then you have to think, what are the enemy heroes? So one of the big factors that goes into roaming is, or rather in choosing your roamer, is that, okay, so the enemy team, if they pick Zeus, he's ripe for the picking. Like, Zeus is so easy to roam on. If the enemy team picks a Zeus or like an Invoker or even a Sniper at lower levels, you can just roam on them and kill them over and over again. If they pick a Quap or a Viper or a Razor, it's going to be very difficult to kill these heroes. So that's when picking a roamer either goes downwards in viability and you're honestly better off picking a jungler, or just a like force support that stays in safe lane and roams to off lane, stuff like that. And so that's when the values change, and that's when you may or may not have to pick a different hero, because sometimes roaming is just not effective.
All right, so I want to ask, I mean, is the, because one of the things I wanted to get into is like what the goals of a roamer should be.
Okay.
I want to verify. Do you feel like you're putting a bias on the mid lane because of all your mid lane play, or do you legitimately think that roaming is primarily mid focused? Because I'll be honest, like for instance when I played that Ricky, I harassed in the jungle a lot, but I spent a little more time maybe in the off lane even than I did necessarily in the mid. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that the metagame in general over the last, I would say probably the last year, maybe year and a half, has favored roaming at mid. Nowadays, you see dual lane mids at high MMRs virtually every game, to some extent, greater or lesser. The mid lane is perfect for roaming because, in large part, because of the levels that mid laners get, which means they're going to have more tools to kill the enemy mid, and vice versa. Whereas an off laner, if you roam to his lane, he is generally going to be zoned, or she is going to be generally zoned. Stuff like that is going to happen. Also, the safe lane, if you're roaming on the enemy safe lane with your offlaner, there's going to be more heroes there just natively to the lane, right? It's always most effective to pick at people where they're weak. So if they have a solo safe laner or a solo enemy offlaner, stuff like that, that's where you can best get your kills. Whereas a lot of times I'll say when I see people roam to the offlane, to their offlane, is times where they just want XP, so they end up soaking XP from the offlaner, and then the offlaner gets stilted and doesn't have their 6 at the right time or whatever. So it does change game to game for sure. And of course, if they have a jungler, that's another whole facet that you have to factor into this mental math. But mid lane is generally the lane that you want to roam on the most, and that has the most potential gains and potential losses to roam onto.
Okay, so let's take this lane by lane then.
Yeah.
Let's work from the off lane to the safe lane. So under what circumstances am I roaming over to the off lane to help my off laner? What am I looking to accomplish there, and what are some of the signs that I could be looking for as a roamer in order to know that I should be up there taking advantage of? Okay,
so there are two core times where you roam to your offlane to help your offlaner. There is the first column, I guess, the first option, which is your offlaner getting zoned out completely and can't do anything? Then you roam to help them establish a lane where they can get some XP and actually participate, if they can't jungle. So an offlaner like a Timbersaw, for instance. If you're playing, I'm just going to use Spearbreaker, because honestly, he's the highest MMR, or he's the highest win rate roamer at 5k plus right now, and he is a beast. So if I'm playing Spearbreaker and my offlane is a Timbersaw, and he's getting zoned out by, let's say, like Warlock, Witch Doctor, AM as the enemy safe lane, he's going to get screwed anytime he goes to that lane. But if you bring yourself there, you can deal some damage to the Witch Doctor, let's say, maybe get a kill, maybe not, and establish a lane status where he's going to be able to now get some XP that he was not able to get earlier. Whereas if you have an offlaner like an Axe and he has a terrible safe lane, you just say, hey, dude, just go jungle, whatever, who cares? The other is my offlaner is doing well because, let's say, they have a jungler or they have a roamer that's not attentive to the safe lane. Then you have the offlane situation where, oh, my offlaner is set up to get kills. So Centaur is probably the best example of an offlaner like this. If you're playing Spearbreaker, you can roam in, and the two of you, two tanky heroes, are going to be able to put a ton of pressure on the safe lane, kill people potentially. If nothing else, you'll be able to deny a ton of farm. So, and that also extends to any other roamer or any other aggressive offlaner. Like if you have an offlane Legion, Legion can say, okay, I just got 6. We don't want to play that as much, but honestly, offlane Legion's legit if you can get away with it. If you have an offlane Legion and you're playing, let's use Ricky as the example that you brought up earlier, you can roam in right when she gets 6. You can, using that same setup, you can blink strike Cloud, the Witch Doctor. He's gonna be slowed. He's gonna be silenced. Then the LC comes up and gets easy dual damage, for instance. Stuff like that. So again, similar to our dichotomy between aggressive category A roamers and less aggressive category B roamers. Same thing with the offlaners, right? There are offlaners that you need to help, and there's offlaners that you can take advantage of them having a good time already. And this also depends, of course, on the enemy safe lane and whether they're tri-laning them or whether they're dual laning them, etc.
So when I'm coming up to the off lane to harass on my roamer with either of them, who should we be looking to get the kill on? I mean, is it should I just be looking for the lowest health hero? Should I be trying to target a support because they're weaker? Should I be focusing on the carry because I want to stunt the carry? How do I prioritize my targets when I'm coming up there?
Okay, so, and this also applies to offlaners, just because we're talking about this lane, but the first thing you have to do in every offlane situation is assess A, how much kill potential do they have on me and or my roamer? And then B, you have to look at all their items and say, okay, who has the most regen, who has the least regen, and also factor in things like Witch Doctor, Voodoo Restoration, stuff like that. So in that vein, if you are, let's say, the roamer, and you have, again, let's say an offlane Centaur, because that's probably the most common offlaner right now, and you say, okay, the two of us have kill potential, potentially. We are... Potentially. That's an incredibly confusing way to put it. But
Sorry.
if you're using this example from earlier with the Witch Doctor is a pretty low HP hero. He's also pretty slow. He has like 290 move speed, I think. So you can get on him and say, okay, Witch Doctor brought a salve, 3 tangos because he pulled one to mid because he's a good player, 2 clarities, and like 2 branches to lane. And then you say, okay, the other support is, I forgot the example we used earlier, so let's just say a Shadow Shaman, and he brought only tangos to lane and 2 clarities. So one of these supports, both are pretty easy to kill because both are squishy. One of them has a salve worth of regen in addition to his tangos. The other one has just tangos. So whether you're playing the offlaner trying to harass or trade, or whether you're playing the roamer, you're going to want to say, okay, we're going to go in and try to kill the person with less regen if it's at an equal playing field, basically. Of course, let's continue using this example, if you have a Witch Doctor as one of the supports in the safe lane, and then you also have, let's say, an Omni Knight as their 4, the Omni Knight's going to be a bitch to kill. Like, it's just not going to happen, right? But the Witch Doctor now rises in priority to kill. Similarly, if they have a safe laner that's hard to kill versus if they have a safe laner that's easy to kill, that's going to change even more. But generally, you just
I may not want to jump on that AM because if we don't get the perfect stun lock with my Spirit Breaker and my Centaur,
then you just wasted everything
away.
Exactly, yeah. Or if they have a Sven and it's just like, hey, he's just hard to kill. Like, it's just hard. So that's really it. I mean, that's what Dota comes down to a lot of the times, is just assessing and saying, okay, we need to have a priority list, like a number 1 person we can kill, Witch Doctor, number 2, Shadow Shaman, number 3, AM, and then you go down that list and say, okay, 3 is not killable, 2 is kind of killable situationally, and 1 is definitely killable, and then go down that way.
Using though, like the Sven in that example, would it ever make sense to go on the hero that I feel like might be able to disable us the most? You know what I mean? Because I can see myself saying, hey, let's go on the Sven instead because Sven's got that wicked sick Stormhammer that he's just going to throw on us, and then we're not going to be able to kill anybody.
Yeah, but then you still don't kill anybody. So, like, you've still just expended a bunch of resources to accomplish essentially nothing, right? Going on the Sven is not productive unless you're going to be able to kill him. Similarly, going on the Witch Doctor is not terribly productive unless you're going to kill him. That being said, there is also value in certain matchups. This is mostly an offlaner thing. But if they have, again, using the Sven, who's generally pretty hard to disable, or to kill, rather, if you have the offlane Timbersaw we were talking about earlier, and he's done well, then he can just harass the Sven over and over again, and then the roamer can come in and cinch the kill, right? So that's more of an offlaner problem, honestly. If they have a really tanky safe laner, you need to have him already at a disadvantage before you can kill him, or you need to rotate an additional hero, or like have a Sunstrike or a Zeus ult. But generally,
Right. Okay.
you want to set the stage by killing the supports, not by trying to kill the carry. That it's like a low percentage play, basically, trying to kill the carry. Where, yeah, sure, if you get it, it's going to be great, but realistically speaking, you have like a 10% or less chance of killing the guy in this situation.
Right. Okay. Let's move over to the mid lane then. So, what indicators am I? So, because I guess let's rephrase this. What indicators am I looking for that I should be roaming mid? When should I be doing it? As an example, I'll say the one thing that I'm typically looking for, especially like in the team stream recently, one way I feel like the lesson I've learned there has been. When the creep equilibrium is in our favor, that's perhaps the best time for me to roam over there. When the creep equilibrium is not in our favor, that is absolutely
it's pointless,
horrific.
basically. Okay, so there, I would say again, I think almost all of these really come down to there's two basic situations where you roam and two different ways to approach it. In mid lane, situation A is that the enemy team is roaming on your mid laner, so you need to be there basically as backup, as like an enforcer. Right, if you think of it like a Western, if you have one guy and then the enemy, and then there's two guys on the other side, the one guy is disadvantaged and is put on the back foot. Similarly, if you are getting roamed on by, let's say, okay, let's talk about this matchup specifically. Let's say it is a Invoker versus Templar Assassin matchup. So both have decent kill potential for both teams. Both deal pretty well with being having roamers for their team, and both have their own ability to dissuade enemy roamers from trying to kill them, but both are high priority kills for each team. So if you have this matchup, then let's say again the roamers are Spirit Breaker and Riki. If it's the Riki with a TA, the Riki can come in, can smoke cloud the Invoker, prevent him from going invis. TA can get a meld strike that's going to amp the damage for both of them, and they're going to deal a bunch of damage and kill him. So let's say that happens once, right? Let's say it's like 5 minutes, both of them are level 4. The Invoker gets killed by TA plus Riki. Let's say TA got a good rune. Then the Invoker's team is going to is going to now call for roaming, right? Because if your mid laner, especially a high priority, very needy mid laner like an Invoker, is going to need that bit of help, that's when you playing the Spirit Breaker are going to come in and going to either get a kill on the TA, which is honestly not that realistic depending on the Invoker's build that game. Or at least you could just put your body there, and that way, if they roam on him, you can be there as a defensive force and prevent kills on your safe laner, or rather on your mid laner. This is especially this is especially different if it is, I would say, what I would call the second category of roaming on mid laners, which is roaming for kills on weak mid laners. So to talk about a different matchup, let's say it's the same TA from earlier. Now let's say instead of an Invoker, we have a Zeus. Now Zeus, I would say, is the mid laner that is most susceptible to roaming, or to getting roamed upon, because he has no escape quality, right? Like at a very fundamental level, he's a slow hero that is low armor relatively, doesn't build a lot of tanky stuff earlier. It's not like he's a PMS carrier. And then he doesn't have an escape ability like a Blink, like a Quap does. So you want to roam on him a lot. Similarly, other things like this would be early game Storm Spirits, pre-6, you want to set the stage by putting them at a disadvantage and killing them at least once. If you have mid laners like Necrophos even, Necrophos is tanky in a way, but if you just burst him down real quick, he doesn't have an escape. He's relatively easy to kill, especially if he's low level. His heal does not deal that much damage. It's also why some mid laners like Silencer are really greedy, because it's just so easy to get roamed on and screwed. So that's what I would say the second category is. The first one is a defensive roaming, where the enemy team is roaming on your mid laner and you need to put your body there either in a saving capacity, so like if he's getting dove, you TP, you come in, or you just charge in, however you want to get there. Or the secondary one, which is, hey, the enemy mid laner is low or is easy to kill or whatever, some combination of those, let's kill him. Those are really the two kinds of roaming.
Right. And if I'm roaming and I see the mid getting dove on, that's probably my responsibility, right? Like I should be the one, because I need to leave that safe lane support down there with the safe lane carry. The off laner, I'm assuming relatively early in the game at the very least, needs to be getting his XP or worrying about his lane or worrying about denying the farm there. Yeah. If I'm the roamer, that responsibility falls solely to me to ensure that if the mid is getting roamed on or the mid is getting dove, I'm the TP that needs to be looking to get there.
Not solely, but it is very important. If your mid lane is having trouble and you're playing a roamer, you are not doing your job. or rather, you need to start doing your job and go there. If depending on your support duo, you do the priority system for who's going to TP mid. If mid is getting dove, changes. Like, let's say your support duo is Spirit Breaker Rubik. Rubik's great at TPing and reacting to your mid getting dove. So the Rubik would not, like, it's not solely on the Spirit Breaker to TP there. So I don't want people to be like, it's the roamer's job, screw him.
Sure.
If you watch high tier pubs, or you watch me play support, the first thing you buy every game, your first thing you do is you buy a TP scroll if you're playing anybody with a save, and even if you're playing somebody without a save, honestly. So yeah,
because sometimes just having another body there can be enough to deter or at least make somebody think twice about continuing the dive.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so what other than like creep equilibrium or my mid being dove on, is there something else? And well, I guess let's sum up the indicators that I should be roaming mid. That's how I'll take this.
Okay.
If my mid is being dove, I should be there.
Yes.
I should try to get there. If I see the creep equilibrium is crazy in our favor, I could potentially try to make a play, depending on the combination of, is my mid a good setup, or am I a good setup? Right, basically,
somebody has to set things up. It's like, right. I mean, Proud gets flamed constantly for saying do nothing heroes, but if you have two do nothing heroes, you can't get kills. So if you have a do nothing mid, like, let's say, I mean, any mid can be a do nothing mid if they're low and have no mana. So I'll just use that example without getting specific. Okay. And if you have a roamer like a bounty hunter, and it doesn't matter where the enemy's creepy equilibrium is, they could be super out of position. But if you have like an invoker with no spells and a bounty hunter, you can't kill him. Like, even a Zeus that I was talking about earlier. Right. Can't kill him. Like, you're just screwed. So you're just wasting your time.
So don't waste your time. So at that point, don't waste your time there. And then the other indicator that I should maybe be hanging out mid is if the enemy team has somebody who's also hanging out mid.
Yes. So essentially what it all falls down to is the enemy team, do I have kill potential in the enemy team? If yes, I'm going to roam on them. Does the enemy team, are they exerting a lot of pressure on my mid? Then I need to be there anyway to defend my mid laner, because the best way to counter a roamer is with another roamer.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, it's always hard. Dota is such a complicated game to podcast about at a certain level because it is so hero specific, and
sure. But I mean, I think this has been a good discussion though. Oh yeah, I think this has been good. It's
very like
it's always elucidated some of the goals. That's what we're looking for to. Well, I mean, and that's the point. I mean, that's why I wanted to bring it up. It's like I want to know what I want to get away from mimicking what I see and responding with more reasoning. And I hope that that's what we're helping folks do. Yeah. So let's go to the safe lane. Okay. When I'm roaming down in the safe lane, am I basically just kind of treating that like I'm basically just in a tri lane at that point, a good old fashioned tri lane.
I mean, insofar as that three people in a lane is a tri lane, that's like a tri lane is a like methodology and a theory and a strategy, or just a strategy, not the first two. Whereas having three people in a lane does not a tri lane make.
Yeah. Okay. So why am I roaming then? If I'm playing this roamer, I'm playing that Spirit Breaker, that Ricky, that Bounty Hunter. Why am I in the safe lane? What am I looking for? Why? Where should I? Am I looking at that makes me say, okay, time for me to get down to the safe lane?
Okay, so first of all, and by far the most important thing about picking a roamer, A, from the score screen, and B, playing a roamer, is that if the enemy team is playing an aggro duo or an aggro tri, and you need to be in the safe lane, fundamentally. Your safe laner needs to get farm, and by far the most tilting thing, I know if you watch the team stream, you'll hear this constantly, but if the enemy team is running an aggro duo, let's say Abaddon Enchantress, actually that's a bad example because that duo is just going to win anything. If it's like Abaddon and a Wraith King or a Venomancer, and you have a roamer, let's say you're playing Spirit Breaker from earlier, I don't care that you plan to roam, you're playing a safe laner. Like, you are playing a safe lane support. If the enemy team is aggroing against you, you need to be there. You cannot duo lane versus duo lane, your safe lane versus their off lane. If they're duo laning you, they're playing an aggressive tri, an aggressive duo, you need to have three bodies there to counteract that, because they're investing all those resources into shutting down your safe laner, so you need to prevent them from doing that. That being said, if that's not the case, if it's a generic, 2v1 solo offlaner, and then you as a roamer, and then 2 people in the safe lane carrying the support, then you want to roam either A, when you have kill potential. Again, a lot of this really boils down to just being a checklist of kill potential, and you need to roam when you can either kill the offlaner, or if he's getting a lot of farm and XP, or if your safe lane support on your team sucks at zoning. So let's use the example of a safe lane support is a, let's see, Shadow Shaman. Shadow Shaman is slow. He deals a lot of damage, but he's slow. His turn rate's bad. His attack animation's slow. He doesn't have a lot of attack speed. And the enemy team is running like in Abaddon with a poor man's shield. This Shadow Shaman cannot zone this guy, right? Just fundamentally. Unless one player is way better than the other, that's not going to work out. So then you need to say, okay, I'm playing my roamer. I need to at least make a couple trips into the safe lane to zone him effectively, right? If you put him on a back foot by roaming towards that lane, and you don't even have to kill him necessarily. A lot of times it's worse to kill him. If that's like more complicated than I think we need to get into. But if if your 2 people are not able to zone the offlaner, you can just come in, get him to half life, whatever, make him lose a lot of regen. For instance, he has to use all his tangos, let's say, put him on the back foot, and then it'll make it very much easier for your safe lane support to zone that person when you go and roam to other places. The other key aspect of roaming to the safe lane, I would say, is that when you guys have kill potential in the offlaner, you need to exert that kill potential, right? If they are, let's say it's a Tide Hunter and he's about to get Ravage, you want to stop him from having Ravage, right? So your carry says, okay, I'm level 6 because he got zoned a bit and I got a lot of farm. It's a jug, let's say. You need to come in to close that kill out and keep that guy on the back foot, prevent him from getting his big thing, whether it's a Ravage or a big item, let's say, or any other, important bench or important power spike. So those are, I would say, probably the 2 big things. Is just
would it be fair to say that as a roamer, maybe one of my priorities should be to you made me think of this with the comment about your getting rid of the tangos and making it easier to zone later on. That's something that I mean I think I've been subconsciously aware of, but now I'm kind of giving more conscious thought to. Should I be looking at myself as, especially during the laning phase, as somebody who is there to basically get the enemy to deplete their resources? So, focus on that safe lane, and when the safe laner's done getting rid of all of his, focus on the safe lane. When the enemy offlaner's resources are all but depleted, then maybe I start looking at roaming to the mid and roaming to the off lane.
Yeah. So basically, actually, I wish I had thought of this metaphor like 35 minutes ago, but the thing I would say with roaming, the most important, like if you have to have a motto for roamers, it's that you should go where you are needed. And occasionally you're going to be needed in mid, right? Like we were talking about earlier. They're roaming 2 people in your mid. You're needed there. You need to be there. You're sometimes needed in the off lane because now you have kill potential, or your off laner's having a hard time. Sometimes you're needed in the safe lane. You need to be going from lane to lane to lane to lane to lane and dealing with whatever needs to be dealt with, right?
I think that's obvious. I guess more what I was hoping we would do is like identify how to figure out that you are needed. You know what I mean? Like, that's
I'd say, as obvious as that sounds, that is oftentimes not what is in practice done, right? We talk all the time about Dota being theoretically not that difficult, but in practice it is incredibly difficult. Roaming, a lot of times you'll see failed roamers. They continue to roam to mid. They say, all right, I'm okay. So I'll use an example of actually a game that I fed in the other day. So I was playing a Roman Kunkka because I was tilted, and I was like, all the regular roles got picked, and I was like, whatever, I'm just gonna play Kunkka. He sucks now, by the way. That's why you don't see him ever. But I just kept trying to roam to a lane with, let me find the exact game. But I kept roaming to a lane where I was not needed, A, and B, there was no kill potential on the enemy mid laner. I'm pulling up the game right now. Okay, so I kept roaming on the enemy mid, who was a Lina, which generally is not that difficult to kill, but my mid was a Weaver, which now you can see why I was tilted. So I kept doing the wrong thing, right? I thought I was needed in one place, whereas in actuality, I was needed in my safe lane to zone out and kill the Faceless Void, right? So you need to... the needs of the game change a lot, right? And it's very easy to get mistaken about, oh, well, I'm a roamer, so I'm just going to roam on mid. I would say that's probably the most common misconception with roamers, and that's where I see them fail the most, is they think, oh, my job is to roam on mid lane. My job is to get kills on the enemy mid, but then the enemy mid's a Viper, and it's like, no, we can't kill this guy. It's just never going to happen. And then you end up forsaking your safe lane because they're getting pressured by a Broodmother and like a Venomancer, but you're convinced in this single-minded assault on a Viper that you're never going to kill. So that's definitely, if we're going to boil things down to their core concepts, you really need to be thinking in every time you leave base, every time you go anywhere, you need to be thinking, okay, where am I needed and where am I not needed? And don't be where you're not needed and be where you are needed. Again, like, it sounds easy. Like, don't be dismissive of easy things that sound easy, because boy, the core concepts are what's way more insightful than like, because that's why you never have a single-minded, like, okay, well, I guess safe lane carry is probably the most single-minded thing, where it's just like, okay, I need farm and I need to get farm. Whereas supporting, whether as 4 or 5, you really need to be triage going to other lanes and either making things happen or preventing the enemy team from making things happen on your guys. Anyway.
Yeah. So, all right. So one last roaming question, or I think maybe the last roaming question.
We got time. They go along in this show all the time.
Oh yeah. Back to my original example of me following around that Enigma in the jungle. When the enemy team does have a jungler and I've picked a roamer, how should I be handling where should I be prioritizing that jungler? Like, what should I be doing with the jungler?
Okay, so first off, it depends on your roamer, right? So Riki is one of the better examples of a hero that can deal with a roamer. Earth Spirit's another good one, right? So if we think about it, it also depends on their jungler. God, I hate these specifics. Okay, so
we're doing the best we can.
No, I know. It's just every time I want to say something, I'm like, that's too specific. It doesn't work. Okay, so when the enemy team is running a jungler, this applies to everybody actually, but especially roamers. You need to basically, let's see, what is the word I'm looking for? You need to abuse the fact that they have one less body participating in the actual game, right? The jungler is playing a PvE simulator. They're not participating in the actual PvP 5 versus 5 Dota game, right? So you need to abuse the fact that your team has 5 players and their team has 4 players and one guy dicking around in the jungle. So you need to say, okay, I'm playing this roaming Riki. I can... and their mid is, let's use the example from earlier, a Zeus. If they had a 4-position Ogre, let's say, or any other 4-position, they could, if I tried to aggress on the Zeus, defend him. If they have a Legion Commander jungle, they cannot do that, right? Just empirically speaking, they have literally no potential to save this guy if you dive him and if you try to kill him, right? So that's when... other
than possibly like rotating out the 5 support, and at which point you can take advantage of that lane.
And then you bully the safe lane, because the 5 support wasted 50 precious gold and can't get all the way back to safe lane. So now your offlaner can get a bunch of XP that he would not have gotten otherwise, or she would not have gotten otherwise. So that's the first key thing about establishing, hey, the enemy team has a jungler. We need to abuse the fact that all our lanes are better because they have somebody that's literally just not participating in lanes. So that's the first, and that's probably the simplest thing. The other thing is, depending on your hero and depending on their hero in the jungle, you can just kill the jungler over and over again. So using the example of Legion Commander, and this also requires some knowledge of jungling, which honestly, I suck at jungling. I never do it. I refuse to do it anyway. The certain junglers are going to be weaker in the jungle than others. So Bloodseeker, for instance, as a jungler, is very efficient after level 3 or so. It's still pretty efficient earlier, but he's going to be pretty low health for those first few camps. Axe is another similar one. Axe gets very good in the jungle and very efficient, but at the start, he gets really low. So knowing that information, if you're playing, let's say, an Earth Spirit, you're not invisible, so it's harder to roam into the jungle without being seen, but you can just walk in and kill him, right? Like Proud playing Monkey King on this past Theory Crafting Thursday. He knew the enemy team is jungling an Axe because the offlane was too difficult for them. The Axe was super easy to kill because he's a hero that jungles at low HP, right? And then there are junglers that jungle at high HP, like Enigma. Enigma is incredibly hard to kill in the jungle unless you roam multiple people Or I suppose if you get like a really long drawn out engagement where you just slow him to death with like an Earth Spirit with an Orb of Venom or something. Or if he's soul ringing too much, I don't know. But in general, he's not going to be killable. So you need to now, again, make that checklist and check off either the box, hey, they're killable, or B, they're not killable. If they're not killable, that's generally when you go towards that the first example I was talking about, where if you can't kill the enemy jungler, just abuse the fact that their lanes are all weaker, or roam multiple people on them. But if they're a killable jungler, just kill the jungler. And you want to do it earlier rather than later, because almost all junglers get more efficient, and they tend to be at low life less as they get higher levels. So you need to establish, hey, you're jungling and this is bad, and I'm going to kill you and punish you for it. Also, stealing their creeps is good. So we're going to get to that one in just a second. So take advantage of the jungler early, super early. Go in, kill them if they're killable. Yeah. If you can, and maybe rinse and repeat if that's possible. If not, if they're not somebody if you're not going to be able to kill them, make them, your attempt then becomes to make them lose every other lane and punish the jungler that way. Exactly. Yeah. And also tilt the enemy team, which is actually a very valuable thing in the game of Dota that like you can actually pretty much quantify. I would say the classic mistake, and this is a mistake every single person from 0 MMR to 9,000 MMR has made. If the classic mistake is just saying, okay, it's 5 minutes, now we need to roam on their jungler. No, that's not going to work, right? It's 5 minutes. Their jungler is level 5 or level 6 or whatever. He or she is not going to be low HP. This is just not going to work, right? You never want to realize, oh, they have a jungler. Or, oh, hey, we need to deal with this after you've already hemorrhaged so much gold and so much advantage. So that's another big one, is you need to be doing things, like you said, earlier rather than later, right? You need to, it's like preventative medicine versus the other kind, right? You need to catch it before it spreads and before it gets bad.
Yeah, we want to be proactive, not reactive.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's core.
So now back to the example that even got me thinking about all this Roman business eons ago. Me hanging around that Enigma and just trying to soak XP from him and trying to snipe a creep here and there. Would I have been better off spending more time being present in my lanes as opposed to doing that? Or do you think that's a valuable, or is that like a valuable spending of my time?
I mean, it's not terrible, but at a certain point it becomes inefficient, right? So if you're sniping creeps, that's also an added value, of course, because not only are you denying him farm, but you yourself are getting farm. Whereas if you're just wandering around, you're not getting farm naturally. Also, this should be a preface just to our entire conversation, but if you're a roamer, take advantage of the fact that you are walking around the map, therefore are able to get bounty runes, compared to other people that are busy doing other stuff. Like in this past team stream, we had a CM that was not even roaming, but she took time to roam, and she just took like 800 bounty runes and got super fat. So in that vein, if you are stalking an Enigma through the jungle, right, that's going to be valuable in the early game where he is not super efficient at jungling, not super quick about it. So if he spends all this time and all these Eidolons cooldown and all that trying to kill a Furball camp, let's say he Eidolons the small creep and he tries to kill the big tomato guy, if you snipe that, A, you're getting whatever it is, 75 gold. B, he's not getting that gold. C, he's getting less XP than normal. And then on top of that, you're getting all those resources. So, but if you roam in him at 10 minutes or 5 minutes, then, you know, he's going to say, okay, you snipe a Furball, whatever, I can move on. I can go kill 5 more camps because I have the resources to kill camps, right? So hurting people when they're in their foundational stages of jungling is a much bigger deal. Whether that's killing them or whether that's just making it so they jungle more slowly. But the key and the big thing is you can't just spend your entire early game just stalking that guy, right? You spend, let's say, 2 minutes stalking the Enigma in the jungle, denying him farm, denying him XP, taking his XP, maybe even getting a rotation from one of the safe lane supports of the enemy team to come and try to deal with you, which is inevitably not going to work because it's an Enigma. He has no kill potential early until he has Black Hole. So let's say you spend your first 2 minutes doing that, then you're going to have, let's say, level 2, maybe level 3, probably not level 3 actually. Then you can just roam to the mid, right? Because now you have more resources and your enemy mid laner is getting lulled into a false sense of security. You've put their whole team off kilter, so to speak. because they're expecting to just have a jungler hanging out doing the jungle. So you don't want to overcommit to any one lane or any one role on the enemy team. But if you can really shut down multiple lanes a little and make your lanes go even better, that's super valuable compared to overcommitting to one person, right? Because the Enigma's gonna jungle regardless of you. You just slow it down. Compared to maybe a Legion Commander where you can actually literally just make it so he cannot jungle if that person gets dominated.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm somebody who enjoys roaming, who likes playing that 4-position support. I want to play with a team. I want to do it a little bit more in my pubs or in my party queue. Who are the top 5 heroes, top 5 roamers in the current meta that I should definitely learn and start getting some reps on?
Okay, so number 1, I would say is... Oh god, it's always hard to number these exactly. Okay, so I would say number 1...
It doesn't have to be in any particular order.
Okay, it doesn't have to be order?
We'll just say top 5, in no particular order.
Okay, so top 5. Number 1, also like in order. Number 1 is definitely Spirit Breaker. Spirit Breaker is a god. He's super hard to kill, super tanky. I would also say, if I had to complete 5, I would say Spirit Breaker... Ricky's good, but I don't know if he's top 5 necessarily. Spirit Breaker, Pudge is legitimately a good hero. Skywrath, also good. Oh god, I'm just gonna end up listing a bunch of heroes. This is gonna not good. Okay, definitely top 3. Right. Definitely top 3. I'm just gonna say a top 3 and not meander about because 4 and 5 could get difficult. Definitely top 3 are Spirit Breaker, Pudge, and Bounty Hunter. Bounty Hunter is good, perfect, especially if you have an actual team and are actually coordinated with your mid laner. And also, he's like a great counter pick, and he scales super well with certain heroes. Pudge is just a good hero in general. He's very X Factor, I guess would be the way I describe him. And Spirit Breaker, I would say, is the most consistently strong roamer like you can ever go wrong. Earth Spirit also is definitely in that top tier caliber, and Monkey King, I would say. So that'd be my top 5, I guess.
Okay. So, and in order of complexity, probably Spirit Breaker being the easiest to initially pick up. Maybe Pudge after that. Then we start getting into the weeds with like Bounty Hunter. Obviously, I mean, if you look at like Bounty Hunter in the meta, I think his win rate below 2K is something like 46%, but 53% at 5K plus. You know, so you can
he is intricate. He has a surprising amount of complexity, I suppose, would be the way to... Yeah. It looks a lot easier than he is. The same thing with roaming, just in general. Right. Roaming as a position. When you're getting roamed against, you think, oh, wow, this is so dumb. They're just running bodies at me. This is so easy. When you're the roamer, you have to think to yourself, like occasionally you get in times where you just don't know what to do. Like, it just... Yeah. Their mid laner cannot be roamed upon. Their jungler has had 6 minutes of free jungle. I can do nothing now. Their offlaner is a Tide Hunter. We can't roam on him. And their safe lane is like... Venge, Sven, and a like whatever Earth Spirit. Like sometimes you're just screwed roaming, honestly, and then you just buy an Iron Talon in jungle. Like that's why Night Stalkers buy Iron Talon so much, because he just has times where he cannot do things.
Right.
Night Stalker would be my honorable mention, by the way. If I had to have an honorable mention that's not in the top 5 is Night Stalker. I am firmly of the opinion that Night Stalker god hero.
All right, folks. So there you go. Those are the heroes to start putting some reps on if you're looking to do some roaming. I hope we shed some light on that role, that position, that element.
I hope so. I don't know how sure I am that we did.
I think so. I don't know. I guess I don't know what else like we would break down. Other than I mean, I guess like general tips and tricks, but I feel like that's way more hero specific than we can kind of delve into.
It's just this show is this episode specifically is definitely one of those episodes where I just have a mental reckoning where I'm like, boy, this game is so hero hyper specific that like it's just so difficult to give firm advice. I think that's why Proudland usually has like series of shows where it's like, all right, this is the first episode of blank.
They should be, and this is where they should run like little series. If we were smarter, we'd like segment things where it's like, all right, so this week we're gonna cover, if we did like position 1 through 5, right? I mean, like 5 episodes on roaming.
We could have each show do something. Like, all right, we're doing 5 episodes on roaming,
or even just Yeah, and delve into like, okay, here's this particular roamer, and here's how he'd handle these matchups. I bet hell,
Yeah, and then on Theory Crafting Thursday, we'd play a roamer and a mid, and then on the Wednesday show, we would do whatever the heck, and then on the Tuesday show, we'd have all questions related to roamers, and on the Friday show, you guys would play roamers, and on Monday show, you'd go over general roaming tips, and then the next week would be all about mid, and then you'd pick mid on Thursday, and that sounds like an unnecessary level of organization for our organization.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe someday, folks.
I was gonna say I had that idea right now, and I'm like, boy, now I kind of want to do that. That sounds really good content-wise.
Well, we'll have time, as we grow as an organization in the future. That's when we'll start doing that stuff.
Yeah, we'll restructure everything. Just you wait.
Yeah, just you wait, folks. All right. So one other thing I wanted to get into before we wrap this episode. And I realized that I might be opening a can of worms here, but fuck them. This is Proudland. They go way long.
Yeah, these are their problems, man.
Yeah. So Midas. I've been seeing it. I feel like I see it more now than I ever saw it before 7.0.
Yeah, you're right. It's better now.
So yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. Like, why am I seeing it so much? When should I be seeing it? When should I be building it? And why? What am I looking at doing here? Because I wonder all the time if I don't know, because I played a miserable game of this is why this popped into my head. So I played this miserable game of Support Disruptor on my recalibration account where I wrongly assessed that maybe people knew what was going on, and I got into it, and this guy was like, oh, I'm gonna go mid, and but I want last pick, and then for the last pick he randomed a Pugna, and I said, oh, I didn't realize you were gonna random to go mid, and he said, yeah, oh, this is my 5th game, but I want to learn mid. He also mentioned that he'd been watching
That person's such an idiot. I just want I want to commiserate with you on that.
His 5th game of Dota.
Oh, it's his 5th game of Dota. I thought it was his 5th game in a row of randoming mid.
No. It was his 5th game of Dota ever, and I guess I just didn't understand.
Nobody understands a person like that.
He watched Pyrian Flax play Dota on a stream, and he loved it, and so he decided he was going to play Dota, and he heard that mid was the best lane to be in, and so he was going mid, but he was randoming, and I gave him a lengthy speech that I'm sure made him hate me.
Oh, yeah.
Hate the game.
And yeah, he's probably like, I'm never playing Dota again. I'm going to go play League.
Yeah. So, but I was playing Disruptor, and part of the insanity that was this game is that the enemy team had this crazy lineup of let's see, it was Bloodseeker, Tinker, PA, Slark, and Necro, and that should tell you what kind of game this was.
Yeah.
Versus my mid Pugna, my safe lane Sven, my off lane Tide Hunter, and my off lane Bounty Hunter. They stayed together, those two.
That's what we call roaming ineffectively.
Yeah, we lost hard. So I was sitting on the Support Disruptor, and I saw my Sven queue up before I even bought brown boots a Midas.
Oh,
and I feel like what happened. I feel like what was happening, and I guess I just didn't realize. I don't remember why I wound up. I don't remember why I decided I was going to support this game, but I remember the thought going through my head that, of course, new players to this game and inexperienced or maybe less skilled players look at Hand of Midas and think, why wouldn't I get this item? It gives me more gold, and gold gives me more items. So why wouldn't I always build a Hand of Midas?
Uh-huh.
I don't think that Midas is all about the gold, obviously. I think more often than not, people are building it. Well, I won't say more often than not, but just as often at the very least, people are building it for the XP.
Yeah. Especially support.
So I want to, for anybody who might be brand new, for anybody who's finding this show for the first time, for those Dota listeners who are picking up Cyphinity, I'm going to try to throw that in there as often as possible. For their very first episode of Defense of the Patience, why should you build Midas? What is the benefit of Midas, and when do we do it?
Okay, so you build Midas when you can. And as simple as that sounds, the situation that allows you to build Midas is when you are playing a hero that does not have very strict item timings and very strict needed items. And B, you build a Midas when you are not losing already. In general, there are some circumstances where you build a catch-up Midas, stuff like that. But in almost all situations, those are the criteria, right? So also certain heroes build Midas more often than not. But the situation where you are a hero that can go Midas or cannot go, or can live without it, like Night Stalker, I guess, would be my example, just to go back to that hero. He's a great hero with a Midas because he does great with levels, he has good talents, and he does not have a strict item timing that he needs to hit in that area where you're going to get Midas. So on a support...
Right, because he's going to be tough at night no matter what.
Yeah, right, and he just has good stats, he has good armor, he has enough mana regen, all that. If you build a Midas at... Let's see, I'll keep this as supports for the first bit. Because that's my forte. Especially, I build a lot of Midases, even when I shouldn't. So I've learned the lesson to not build Midas on a lot of heroes. But on Night Stalker, it's perfectly acceptable to get a 14-minute Midas, let's say, as an offlaner or as a roamer, because he does not have a strict item timing. Whereas to use the example of that person from your game, the Sven is not an acceptable Midas hero because he has strict items that he needs to be buying, and spending 2,000 gold and spending an entire item slot on a Midas that early is going to delay those items that are foundational items for the hero. I think was probably the way I'd put it best. Is if you're a hero that has foundational items, you need to get those. You cannot forsake those to get a Midas. So also, there are just heroes that just build Midas, by the way. That's like a asterisk to this whole conversation. If you're playing a Warlock, for instance, or if you're playing an Invoker, you need a Midas. You just gotta build it. It's important. Just suck it up and build the Midas.
Right.
But
I always kind of put AA in that category as well, just because I feel like when I'm playing AA or Warlock, I know that I need to get my Ags. I know that I need to get levels to have my ult be more meaningful.
Yes.
So grabbing that Midas, it helps me to achieve both of those goals. Right.
Exactly.
I will increase my levels, I will increase my gold, and even if I have a rough time farming, or even if I can never farm, I know that I've got that, whatever that 180 winds up being, however that impacts your GPM. I know that I have that element of GPM kind of built into the hero if I can just get to the Midas.
Yeah. I forget what the exact amount of minutes is, but I think there's something where a Midas pays for itself if you have it and don't lose the game for the next 15 minutes or something like that, 17 minutes maybe. I don't want to do the math right now, but it is an item where it can be really good in certain situations where you're able to buy it. So for instance, if I'm playing the Warlock you're talking about, if I'm playing Warlock and my team is doing great and we win a team fight, let's say it's 15 minutes. We win our first huge team fight because I had a great Fatal Bonds, I had a great Rock. I end this team fight and I have 2,000 gold, or I have 1,200 gold, let's say. That opens up the opportunity to build that Midas efficiently, right? Because I can just in one go, I've now established a state of the game where my team is winning, first of all. So it's not like we're on the back foot and then suddenly somebody spends 2,000 gold on something that's effectively worthless in the instant right now. So that's when you can build a Midas, right? Is you guys are already advantaged and you can increase your advantage by making an investment basically in yourself to have more items later. So if you're on the back foot though, and you're that Warlock and you build your Midas and it's, let's say 22 minutes and you say, oh, it's a catch-up Midas, it's gonna be fine. But then the enemy team just steamrolls you in the next 10 minutes because you didn't build a mech or you didn't build a stat item to work towards your Ags. That applies more so to cores. So using that Sven as the example.
Yeah.
If he's needed in a fight, and somebody expects him to have a stat item, let's say an HOD, or Helm of the Dominator to be more specific, and then he doesn't have that because he said, no, I want a Midas as an investment for later, then you guys are just going to lose faster, basically.
Right.
So that's really the bit of math that needs to go.
The math on that is if you have a Midas, and this is assuming you keep it off of cooldown at all times, you are basically adding 114 GPM to your score, to the gold that you're already getting, and you're already getting 100 gold per minute passively,
something like that.
So even passively getting 214 gold per minute, the Midas pays for itself on just Midas gold after 17.98 minutes. So roughly 18 minutes.
But yeah, so you basically just need to fit it in when you can. I commonly, the time where I build Midas is after a big fight. If I'm playing support especially, I will build a Midas because it's like, okay, well, I'm on a support. My team is not realistically going to let me have a lot of farm from other places. And I'm not playing a support that needs something real quick. That is the other really large asterisk, we should say, in this decision-making process to build the Midas is if you're playing a support like, let's use Lena as an example. You're playing Lena support, you need other items, right? Because her stats are low. She needs things to facilitate LSA. She needs like a Yule's or a Glimmer Cape, items like these to protect herself. Otherwise, she's just going to die. So if you build a Midas on Lena at, let's say, 18 minutes, you're going to have a terrible time because you're just going to die. But if you build a Midas on a hero that does not need one of those small items, that can just do what he or she does, regardless of any next item they're looking for, that's when you can say, all right, I'm going to fit in the Midas, and it's going to let me get really big items, and I'm not going to be punished for it as much because I'm playing, again, a hero like Spirit Breaker or Night Stalker that does not necessarily need that so much, or AA, right? Like AA, unless you play like the Purge style of like fighting AA, where you go like Mana Boots, Urn, and like a Windlace. I mean, you should have Windlace regardless. In general, he does not have any big ticket item to buy, right? It's just an AA, right? Your big ticket item is your Ags. It's not like you need a Glimmer Cape or you need any of these things. You don't need a Blink Dagger. You're not playing a Earthshaker, for instance. So you need to be able, basically you need to be able to get away with it, if that makes sense. And just accept the fact that you're going to suck for the next 6 minutes or 17 minutes or whatever.
But at the same time, though, and yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, yeah, I'm going to be, for the next 18 minutes, I'm going to be behind where I was. But it's not like you're going to be that far behind where you were, because it's also not like you're not, it Midas paying for itself in 18 minutes doesn't mean you're not getting any items in those 18 minutes. You know what I mean? You're still going to be picking stuff up along the way. Yes, you're going to be picking it up slightly later, but you're going to be picking it up also
eventually faster.
Eventually faster. So those 18 minutes are going to be maybe a rough 18 minutes, but I'll bet that those first, I was going to say, I'll bet those first 9 minutes at best are maybe the toughest 9 minutes right after grabbing that for any particular hero. And for a hero like AA or Warlock, who benefits from the levels just as much, mind you, you might actually have a slightly easier time in some respects. You know, if I'm playing Warlock and I grab that Midas early on and I get, I get those extra levels in Fatal Bonds, and I get those extra levels in Shadow Word, and, I probably already have Shadow Word max by the time I get the Midas, but that's neither here nor there. Or I get to that next level of my rocks, even before I get the Ags, I'm still probably ahead for my personal contribution to the team fight, don't you think?
Yeah. Yes, I mean, there are specific heroes that are particularly interested in the XP component of the Midas, and that is further complicated, and this is why you've seen Midas grow more popular post 7.0 by the fact that so many heroes have so many talents that are absolutely core to that hero's success. So that's why you'll see Midas more often on a lot of heroes, and that's why the item is just better.
Can you give me like 2 or 3 examples of heroes that are maybe picking up Midases now to get those talents that weren't before?
Boy, put me on the spot. Let's see. I would say Midas on a hero like Night Stalker to continue to use him as an example. I'm not really enamored with Night Stalker right now, but he has good talents. Let me pull him up exactly, but his talents give him a lot of things that do not rely on items, I would say. Another hero that's a perfect example is like Warlock, right? Because not only is he looking for those big those big ult levels, but he has decent talents, if I recall correctly. AA similarly, he has useful talents. The talents are really on a hero-to-hero basis, honestly. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to look right now. I don't know. I haven't memorized all the talents fast.
I'm looking at most used by heroes for Hand of Midas. Invoker up at the top of the list.
But his is not a talent.
Most used by heroes.
By the way, his 30% XP talent for any of you Invoker players, pretty good. I've been playing around with it recently. It's dope.
Nice. Nature's Prophet. He's number 2 on this list.
Just because he's a
I don't know what
jungler
your
and
thoughts
people
are
are
there.
idiots.
Okay.
I mean,
Silencer,
people are not...
number 3.
Yeah, Silencer, he's very level dependent, first of all. Let's look at his talents, though. Where is he?
+7 intelligence, 4 armor, then 60 gold or 200 health, then magic resistance or attack speed, and then curse slow or attack range.
Okay, so that's not a talent one. That's just I'm playing Silencer, and because he scales well with items, right? And also he benefits actually significantly from the attack speed.
I know.
Enigma.
Number 4 on the list, Bloodseeker. Bloodseeker.
Okay.
It's got to be about talents with Bloodseeker, right?
No, it's just I'm a fast jungler. I think. I mean, I don't know what his talents are. I don't play that hero. Enigma, I would say,
rupture damage. I feel like those rupture builds, when especially maybe this is coming from watching him in the most recent like DAC matches and stuff, but I feel like you see pros going like these rupture builds and snagging that bonus 14% rupture damage.
Yeah.
I would imagine is pretty huge to maybe it would be a good enough reason to segue over to grab that Midas.
Yeah. Also, like, you're just a really efficient jungler. Like, Bloodseeker, if you're jungling properly, is one of the fastest junglers. I think to really round this out, I would say Enigma is the perfect example of a hero that he builds Midas because of course, having higher level black hole and all that is very important, but the big thing is he has all these talents that are high priority, right? The level 10 talent's not that important, but getting the CDR from the level 15 talent, and then the respawn time,
15% cooldown reduction is nuts.
It's wild.
Yeah, 40-second respawn time.
Yeah,
wow.
And a lot of these heroes that build Midas are heroes that do well with very large items, but don't necessarily need those small transitionary items like a Glimmer Cave, like a Vlad, stuff like that. So Enigma, right? He builds all expensive things essentially, other than like Blink Dagger.
Right.
He's building Guardian Greaves.
I want Blink Dagger. I want Guardian Greaves. I want a BKB.
I want an Octarine. I want a Refresher. Yeah. So he's not a hero like let's say Lina, again as an example. If you're playing a support Lina, you build a bunch of small items, so you can't afford to just build a Midas.
Right. Okay, so here's how I want to wrap up the Midas conversation.
Cool.
This is, I think, maybe the best way to do this. Give me the top 5 heroes I should absolutely be building a Midas on. They don't have to be in any particular order. And then give me the top 5 heroes I should never fucking build a Midas on.
Okay. All right. Let's see. On the spot right now. Okay, so Invoker number 1. Always build a Midas on Invoker.
Okay.
And with like barring
Why
extremely weird situations, he just needs the levels really bad. And he does not need those small items again. Like, people used to build those small items, but mostly just an XP thing for him. Midas, I would build it on Nightstalk would also be in my top ones. Support Wraith King, someone. I'm just looking at the list, honestly. Phoenix is definitely up there.
Okay.
Let's see. CM, another classic Midas hero. Spirit Breaker, to bring that up again. These are all heroes, right, that, again, like, you see all of the you see the similarity in all of these heroes, right, in that they are not desperate to build Midas. I mean, rather, they're not desperate for small items, so they can afford to build Midas. Also, a lot of these heroes either will convincingly win a single fight and then have a lot of money to work towards that Midas, or they will just not die over the course of a long period of time. Silencer I'd still put up there. That might be 5. AA also there. So yeah, I mean, that's more or less 5.
Okay.
So
all right. So give me 5 heroes I should never. Who are the worst Midas builders you could possibly imagine?
Okay. First and foremost, the worst hero to build Midas on is Alchemist. I hate this more than I hate anything on this God-given earth. People that build Midas on Alchemist need to be taken out back and shot. That is the most egregious crime against Dota.
Unnecessary redundance.
It's just bad. Like, it's just bad on all levels, right? He's a hero that is very limited by his item slots, so you don't have time to waste on 2,000 gold and an item slot on some dumb Midas. He doesn't scale well with the hero. The hero looks to end games during his peak, which is around 40 minutes, and he is going to need to replace it really quickly. Nothing works to his favor, right? He's working towards these big items. Either if you're playing the fighting build, you're working towards things like Shadow Blade and Mjolnir and AC and a Armlet. If you're playing the farming build, he's farming build. I mean, he's farming regardless. But if you're playing the other build, you're looking on your Radiance and your Octarine and your Manta and all that. So that's an egregious thing. Never build Midas on Alchemist. I don't, unless like maybe support Alch has some weird metagame where it's good, but that's even nonsense.
Okay.
Not even think about it. Other really bad Midas heroes. I mean, I'm just looking at the list right now, and like there are some obvious ones like Meepo. But basically, okay, actually, instead of just listing heroes, I will say the heroes you never want to build Midas on are the heroes that are already farming fast, because they are going to farm fast with or without the Midas. So Anti-Mage is another perfect example. You'd never build Midas on Anti-Mage or Alchemist, because both these heroes, or like Naga Siren, are because all these heroes are going to be farming a ton regardless, independent of the...
So like maybe Luna, throwing Luna on that list?
Luna would be terrible, yeah. Huskar, another, all these fighting heroes, right? Huskar cannot afford to spend 2,000 gold on a Midas because he needs to get a really fast, armlet, because that's how the hero works, right? He needs to peak in that like 10 to 20 minute range and fight a lot. So you can't afford to just spend time and money on a Midas and wait. So instead of just listing a bunch of random bad heroes, that's what I'll say is your hero farms really fast or has certain early game power peaks to hit. Don't build a Midas.
Right. Okay. All right. I feel like we hit the Midas thing the right amount there.
I mean, as long as we hit the don't build a Midas on Alchemist thing, that's all that's important, honestly. If you listen to 90 minutes of the show and all you get from it is don't build Midas on Alchemist, that I've done my job. It has a 31% win rate for context. I'm looking at it right now.
Doing Gaben's work there. Ursi. All right. Well, I anything else you want to add before we let this episode go?
I don't think so. I mean, it's been fun. I mean, I've almost never been on a Monday show other than like back in the day when you guys hosted the Monday show and like I was a guest once, and we never podcasted together either.
For me to be recording on Sunday.
Yeah,
I know.
Too.
I was gonna say, I totally miss. I miss doing the Wednesday show simply because that was like the one time I think you and I got to normally record together.
Yeah, I mean, I like those roundtable shows regardless. That's what all the Patreon episodes are for. Free plug right there, easy. It is. Yeah. It is always interesting.
At some point, we're going to put one of those Patreon episodes in the feed so people can listen to them, just to give them a taste of what.
We make a really good one. I was gonna say we've had some good ones so far. We gotta like pick and choose though. But that's it's fun hosting with people that you don't normally host with. I'll say, like, until I had the Tuesday Q&A, I never hosted shows with Roland, so that like was a jarring experience.
But I can only imagine
it's something.
I've gotten used to the abuse over the years. So it rolls off me now.
He goes every few months and he switches around. So someday him and Proud will have a breakup, and then you and me will just get to watch and hang out, and then we'll get to enjoy.
And then we'll take over the Monday show.
Yeah, Cyphinity.
Yeah, for life. All right, you guys all heard it. This was obviously a better episode.
Of course,
admit it, listener.
We'll see.
You thought to yourself, I wish these guys did it every Monday. You know you did. Just tweet Proud and Roland. Tell them.
Also, guys, like Roland's, there's no way Roland's gonna listen to this episode, right? So we gotta let him know.
Yeah, you gotta let him know how damn good it was. He does listen. Whenever people tell him that an episode was particularly good, and he gets enough tweets or gets enough PMs on Discord or something like that, he will go and listen to an episode. He says he never listens to anything, but he has frequently commented to me on episodes that he has listened to.
Yeah.
Because somebody hit him up and he was like, "Oh well, I felt like I had to go listen to it if everybody told me it was really good." So
yeah, well,
that does happen.
He's choosy. I always get a kick out of the fact that a guy that hosts a successful podcast that is turning into a business for him is like, I don't listen to podcasts. It's not for me. Like, boy.
I know, it's so ridiculous.
I
can't believe he doesn't listen to any podcasts.
So many.
Well, he's
especially like he plays a lot of Dota. Like Dota is such a good podcast. Like if you listen to like casual ones, you just like play a game, relax, play some unranked.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what his problem is, but that's why I'm gonna have to go get that PhD in psychology so I can help him figure out what it is.
Yep, sounds good.
That's the only option as far as I can tell. All right, I'm going to close her out. If you guys want to find us, we're at defenseofthepatients.com. You can tweet at us at .p_show. You can tweet at me at .p_cyphus and Ursi at Ursinity. because he managed to get his own name, even though I still don't have my name on Twitter.
Yep. Life is full of struggle, my friend. Although I couldn't get the email. I was thinking I was just going to register everything I could, Ursinity, and somehow somebody has the ursinity@gmail.com email. I've literally never seen this name on anything else. I don't even like this name.
I assume we'll just switch everybody over to the @defenseofthepatients.com.
That's true.
Email, so that's what we need to do. I've just been lazy with setting up all those, and I even thought about like just setting up, because we always tell everybody to email us at defenseofthepatients@gmail.com, but I actually have the email show at defenseofthepatients.com.
Yeah.
That's available. Everybody could email us there, but I love Gmail.
Yeah, me too, dude. I'm a sucker for Gmail, man. I'm like so into the Google sphere, other than Google phones, which I never got into because I've been trapped into the iPhone system.
Yeah, I'm thinking about leaving the iPhone after this last update deleted every text message that I ever had.
That's weird.
Just completely fucked up my phone. And I'm not the only one that it's happened to. Happening to all sorts of people who updated the whatever that 10.3, whatever the most recent fucking update was.
I normally wait as long
just
as
randomly
possible
deletes.
before updating.
Oh, you should. I don't even know. I think it just did automatically because I happened to plug in, to the computer one night to charge up and left it there. And it was like, at 2 a.m. we're going to update for you. Then I lost all my text messages, and it always tells me that my phone is full, even though I've deleted nearly everything that there is to delete off of the phone. It's all gone, but god damn it. Apple just went to shit after Steve Jobs died. That's what I'm deciding.
Yeah, I was him for Halloween last Halloween. But yeah, I'm just tied into the iPhone system, dude. Like, it just sucks. And I never break my phone.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a very careful person, so I have no reason to be like, I'm gonna go get an Android or whatever.
Yeah. I'm the same way. That's the shittiest thing, is I know I'm stuck with this bastard for, another 12 or 18 months before I finally go, all right,
yeah,
I'll do another one.
My problem is mostly just with the iTunes.
But we'll see.
Most monumentally terrible program ever. They're like,
yes,
it was so simple and it was great. And like, also I like it just because I can actually buy Korean music, which I can't buy on most things. And Spotify is lacking of a lot of Korean groups. And like record sales actually count. Well, it's, I don't Roland's on this show, so he can't yell at me, but there's like
yeah, that's right.
iTunes purchases actually count towards like award shows and stuff for like rankings.
Oh, that's cool.
So for Korean groups, because that's like a whole thing that we don't have in America. But so like I feel like I'm doing my part, spending my $6 on their mini album or whatever.
That's right.
And like increasing their number, especially because if you follow like actual like you can see the actual reports of album sales like publicly, because that's just a thing they have to disclose. And so when you realize that like a group only sold like 6,000 albums, it actually feels significant if you bought one, because it's like compared to buying some mass marketed single, it's like, well, a million people own this single from whatever American artist, but like this group only sold 6,000 albums and I own one of them. So anyway,
all right. I'm finishing the plugs because I gotta pee like a racehorse. All right, I drank all this Diet Coke and this damn show went 90 some odd minutes.
Yeah, I gotta go watch the Walking Dead finale that I missed.
Oh, good for you. Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Oh yeah, the show's.
We'll talk about it.
The show's a garbage fire, but like in a fun way.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, I'll take your word for it.
We'll talk.
Also, patreon.com. Ursi mentioned it. Patreon.com/Defense of the Patients. Go there, donate. You can hear all the Patreon exclusive episodes. There's a new one that's already been released. I think that's going to be it. Visit the subreddit. Thanks, Jay Gushi. We love you. All right, that's it. Until next time, this is Cyphus for Ursinity on the best episode of Proudland ever, saying good luck and Godspeed.